Hello, Jason here. In this tutorial, I'm going to be introducing you to rotoscoping. So rotoscoping is basically where you cut out any element within your footage so you can place text or other objects behind to really help embed it within your scene. Or possibly if you want to grade or color that piece separately, or even remove that object or person completely from your scene and place it in a different scene. There are many reasons why you may want to rotoscope footage, but for this introduction, I'm going to rotoscope this skater so we can have some text behind him. So he will essentially be skating in front of some text. So let's just jump in, and I will start by just creating some text. I will just type in the word Roto. I'll leave the font as it is. And then let's just scale this up to the size we want. Let's place it around there. Maybe make that a bit bigger. And that will do for now. We can always alter that later. So you will see that he will be in front of it here. Skateboard, just clip it here, so that's nice. And there. So yeah, I can always alter this later, but I like to place my layer in a scene first, just to make sure I'm not rotoscoping bits I don't need. So for example, I don't need to rotoscope this skateboard until around here, where it will go in front of our layer. Then I can stop rotoscoping after this. If you did want to rotoscope the whole thing, you will need to rotoscope obviously the whole layer from start to finish, but there's no point rotoscoping anything you don't need because it is quite time consuming. So we have our footage and we have our text. So what we need to do is add a new layer, an adjustment layer. And this is where we're going to be putting our masks. I do always prefer to add the masks to the adjustment layer rather than the footage layer itself, just because I find it makes things easier when you want to make adjustments going forwards. So let's just rename this matte. And let's, with this selected, go up to our pen tool where we will be cutting out or drawing around our object or person. So let's just turn off the text for now. And what many people tend to do is do it all in one go. So I will just show you this quickly, and it is a mistake, which I will explain in a second. So I'll just do a quick rough, one continuous mask all the way around our object. And what you will find is if I was just to press M to get our mask up and keyframe this and move forwards, what you realize is it can be very hard to remember which points go where on the character, because what's quite important is to make sure or keep as close as possible is the points and where they are. So for this point, you would want to be on a particular part of the wrist or the end of a finger. So if I keep this point selected and go forwards to our next keyframe, you'll see how it's close enough, but this could easily have accidentally ended up, for example, down here with this one here. And then what happens is you get what we call swimming, which you get this point will then swim and rotate round to a different point. I probably put that too far apart, so let's just move that to here. So now if I select this point at the end of his hand and then scrub back, you will see it rotate round to the bottom part of where his wrist is here, which is not what we want. We want that point to always be in the same place or as close to as possible. So that's a quick tip. What we want to do is do every limb separately. So we will have one mask for his arm, one mask for his hand, one for his torso. We might even do his shoulders and sleeves separately, one for his head, maybe a separate one for his hat, legs, skateboard, and so on. We want one mask for each bit. It just makes it a lot easier to adjust and a lot easier to get it looking nice and tidy. So let's just jump in. I'm going to go back to my pen tool and I'm just going to turn on my text layer so I know where to start. And I might start from, say, here. And then I can work backwards and then forwards from there. It's just because his hand is in a quite unique position there. So it's good to always start where his fingers are maybe spread out so we know we get a point for each little section. So I might start here. So with the pen tool and on our matte layer, I'm just going to zoom in. Let's just do his arm first. So let's just draw a mask over his arm. Try not to create too many points, just points that you need. Too many can get quite confusing. Also, this color of mask is quite hard to see, so just down here, I'm going to click on this colored square. I'm just going to change this to a color that stands out against the background. And there we go. And I'll just continue drawing my mask, like so. Once I've completed my mask, I can go in and select each individual point and I can move them about. It's always worth doing, just going back and just adjusting slightly after you've finished. I'm not going to spend too much time, otherwise we will be here all day, so I'm just going to leave that there. Then I'm going to go down to my mask and make sure I click this stopwatch. I can't tell you how many times I forgot to click stopwatch to create a keyframe and have gone on frame by frame, changing the mask, and then realised I hadn't keyframed and it was just a waste of an hour or more. It's very frustrating. So please try to remember to click the stopwatch and don't be as stupid as I have been in the past. So with this first keyframe, let's just work backwards from here. So I'm just going to go backwards 2 keyframes. Depending on how much your character moves, you could go potentially 10 keyframes, or you may have to do it one at a time, which it looks like I might have to do one at a time, but I'm going to see how 2 goes. So I will go 2 frames back. And I'm going to just double click on the mask, just so it selects the whole thing. And I can move the whole thing down and place it roughly where it was on the arm. And after that, I can go and change each individual point. There we go. And then I'm just going to go in between these 2 keyframes to see if it kept its place. And it kind of did. I do need to adjust a little bit, but that should be fine. So I might stick to doing 2 at a time. So I will go another 2 back, double click, and move it into position. You can select more than one point at once if you want to move a whole section of the mask. And then just put it into position. Go backwards another 2, double click on the mask, and move it into position again. If you select more than one point and then double click on one of those points when they're selected, you can rotate and change the scale and position of those bits. It's quite handy to know sometimes. And there we go, I'll just speed up a bit. Do that. Back to. Here's where it gets a bit trickier because his arm's bending. Like there. Here's where it's useful to be able to move the whole, or move and rotate a particular group of frames. Points, sorry. There we go. I'm just going to go in between these 2 keyframes. Yeah, 2 seems to be working. I'm going to stick with 2. Let's just go from there. Let's not go back any further than that for now. So let's go forwards a little bit and do the same. See, I just went back to this keyframe just to see where this particular point was, and it seems to be sort of where his elbow is. So I just want to make sure that is in the same position. So I'm just going to move that across. And where are these two? I'm just going to check that. So that one's in this sort of crease. I might move these. So about here. Okay, I'm just going to leave that there for now. Turn our roto layer back on, and under the track matte, I'm going to go to drop down and select alpha inverted matte. So now the section within our mask is now revealed in front of the text. It will look a bit odd, mainly because his sleeve and hand aren't quite rotoed yet. So I'm just going to paint that through. Yeah, that bit of his arm seems to be holding up quite well. So I will, just for this section, move on to his hand. Let's just go in the middle, turn our text layer off, select our matte layer, get our pen tool, and then I will just draw a mask around his hand. This will be a bit tricky because it's very thin and very quite blurry, so I'll just do this quite rough. His hand will be moving quite quick, so we can get away with a slightly rougher mask on this bit. Make sure we click on the stopwatch to create a keyframe. Just go back one frame this time. I'm just going to change the color of this to blue just to see it a bit easier. We'll do this quite roughly, just so you get the idea. Back to so here we can see that where we started from, there was sort of just, you couldn't quite see this gap here, but getting to this point, we can. There's an extra gap here where his fingers are more spread out. So what I will do is go up to the pen tool, click and hold, and go down to add vertex tool. And I'm just going to click and hold here and drag and release, and then go back to our selection tool, and with that point selected, I'm just going to move it down, and then I'm just going to adjust these points just to fit that in a bit nicer. Whoops, I'll do that. And then with this point selected, I'm just going to go back to our other two keyframes we have, just to make sure that's the one that goes down in that space. This mask does look quite ugly. It looks like his hand is quite deformed, but we will be feathering this off just to account for the motion blur. So a lot of this will be hidden. So we should get away with this one being a bit rougher and a bit deformed. It should look okay in the final version. So I'm just gonna put that there. Let's go into the end section. I'm just going to do this very quick now. Okay, and that'll do for now. I'm just going to zoom back out and turn on our text layer. Just play this section through. And there we go. As you can see, although our mask was quite rough, you don't really notice it because it's moving so fast. And what we would do later, I'll just show you now, but we will leave it on 0 for now, is later we will add a bit of feather to all our masks, just to account for the blur. There you go. And then if I go forward a bit, you'll see that that feather really helps with that motion blur and hides the fact that the mask is quite rough. So that's that part of the arm and the hand. I will just show you one more quick bit before I power on and do the lot. And that is just his shoulder here. And the main reason I'm going to show you this bit is because, as you can see, the white of his shoulder is very similar to the background. So it could be quite hard to know where his shoulder finishes and the pillar behind him starts. So what I do here quite often is select the footage layer and add a curves or any sort of grading effect just so I can adjust it slightly and try and make a bit of contrast between him and the background. So just by dropping the curves, it just does make his shoulder pop slightly more. So I'll just leave that about there, and then leave that on. That will be turned off later, so don't worry about how horrible it looks. Back to our matte, and again with our pen tool, just going to draw a mask around his shoulder and sleeve. I'll change the colour of that mask and make sure we click on the stopwatch. So I'll just do this bit quite quickly. There we go. So I'm just going to turn off that curves layer and then turn back on our Roto text layer so we can see that arm. Let's play that tiny section. And there we go. That is getting there. It's a very slow process, so you do have to stick with it. Try to work out beforehand how much of the clip you do want to roto, so you don't end up doing the whole clip. If it's a 30-second clip, you really don't want to be rotoing the whole 30 seconds if you're only going to end up using 2 seconds of that clip. So try to work out in your edit or your scene how much you need beforehand so you don't waste any time. So now I'm just going to power through and do the rest of the roto. So what I will be doing is his other arm, the same as I've done this one with the sleeve, forearm, and hand. Then I'll do his torso, head, hat separately, and then his shorts, one leg at a time, so that would be in 2 bits. I'm not sure how much of his legs I need to do. Definitely from here I need to do his full legs, but for the rest, probably just just below the knees. I don't need to worry about his feet. Again, I'll just be making sure I'll keep turning on this text layer on and off just to make sure I'm only rotoing what I need. But I will keep it in the video. I will have it fast forwarded slightly just so it's not too long. Feel free to watch it. If not, feel free to skip to the end where I will be making final adjustments with the feathers, mask extension, just tidying it up in any way I can, maybe even adding a shadow onto the text. Anywhere I can embed it in even further. So feel free to stick around. If not, feel free to skip to the end and I'll see you there. Welcome back. As you can see, I have finished the Roto. It only took me, I think, 6 hours, which is quite a long time if I'm honest. So it did take a lot longer than I thought, but we did get there in the end. It's not perfect, so what I do tend to do now is I just watch it through a bit slower. I just scrub through, and any imperfections, like here on his back for example, especially up here, I tend to just go in now and I just tidy up a little bit. So if you zoom in, you can click on that individual mask and you can just fix it. And if we scroll up and down here to find that exact mask, right at the top, there it is. Just make sure we're not messing up the keyframes too badly with our adjustments. I'm just going to change these just in certain areas. So what we can do is on certain masks that we know we have a continuous key line or edge around them, as we can see, dark edges, and then down here different colors at the bottom, we can click on that mask so we know which one it is, and we can scroll down to that mask, and we can just, on the expansion, which essentially just extends or subtracts the mask, I'll just show you there. So we can either suck it right in or push it right out. If I just put that to -1, it will just take it all in there, as you can see. And what we might want to do is his shorts here as well. So I'll click on that one, scroll down to that mask, and -1 on the expansion as well. Sometimes you can globally, if you want to click on one mask, to Command or Alt A, I think it's in Windows, to highlight all the masks at once. You can globally change them by changing, if I change this one for example, they would all change. But I don't want to do it on all of them, just on a couple, so I will leave it there. And what we'll do actually is highlight all, so I'll do that again, Command A, and then I'm going to give all of them a feather of 1. That just feathers off the edge slightly, so it's not as harsh, because there is a lot of motion blur going on, so we don't always want that hard edge. Some might want a heavier mask than others. So I've just noticed that his hand here needs a bit of adjustment, so I'll just zoom in. I'm just going to give this one a -1 as well, the expansion. -1. And there we go. Okay, it's not perfect, but we will continue from here. One thing I did forget to mention at the start, and that is the use of these guides. We can go up to View, Show Rulers, and then if we click, we can drag different guides onto our composition. And here, what I do is I'm just using them to let me know where the edges, the start and end, and the bottom of our text is. So when I'm rotoing, I will have the text off, just so I can see what I'm doing a bit clearer. And it's not always easy to see when you're zoomed in. It's not easy to remember where you need to rotate to or not. And there's no point doing the whole 10 seconds if you only need to go up until this point. So as you will see, as it gets past this guide, all the masks will stop as I stop the rotoring at that point, because I didn't need anything further than that, so there's no point wasting my time doing anything I don't need. I can always go back in and extend it if I need, but for now, that was all I needed, so I just added these guides to know where I can start and where I can stop. Also, it helped because I knew that I didn't need to do his feet, except near the beginning when he was doing his kickflip. So if I'm just going to hit U just to collapse all our keyframes. And now I thought what we could do is add a quick shadow. So I'm just going to turn on our text again, or unshadow our footage. And what I'm going to do here is, I'm most likely going to change the order of these actually. So I'm going to, on our roto, on our text, I'm going to just turn off that track matte. And I'm going to duplicate our matte, the one with our masks. So I'm going to go to Edit, Duplicate, and I'll call that Shadow. I'm going to go up to our Effects and Presets, type in Drop Shadow, and drag that onto our shadow layer. Be aware that if you change any masks in your matte layer now, you will need to duplicate again or make those same changes to your shadow layer. Starting from the bottom, what we want is our footage. I will just solo these as we go. We want our footage, then we want our text, then we want our shadow, and then we want a duplicate of our text. So I will duplicate our Roto, our text layer, and I'm going to call that Shadow Matte, and I'm going to drag that above our shadow. I'm going to unsolo that. I'm going to turn on our shadow. And in the effects where our drop shadow is, I just want to have shadow only checked. And we want to uncheck or unclick this button here. So it's no longer an adjustment layer. So click that, and you'll see that you can no longer see the background behind because it's not an adjustment layer. And then we want to do an alpha matte of our text. So that shadow is only seen on the text itself. If I was just solo just the shadow, you'll see you can only see it where the text is. I'll just turn that back on. If I was to then turn off this matte, you'll see the shadow appears everywhere. We don't want it anywhere but the text. So I'll turn that back on to alpha matte. I will unsolo these, and then what we want is obviously our skater on top. So now we're going to duplicate our footage, and we're going to drag that under our original matte, and we're going to also do an alpha matte for that one as well. And there we go. So if he's soloed, you would just see him underneath his shadow, then our text, then our footage. Unsolo those. So let's go back to our shadow layer and go up to our drop shadow effect. And here's where we can adjust how our drop shadow looks. So let's just extend the distance. And what's good to do is just to look in the scene and try and spot any other shadows, just so you can try and match those. The only shadows I can sort of spot are these here. So the light source is probably up to the right, quite high up by the looks of it. Can't really see it on the floor, on the edge here. And this door frame, it's sort of more here than it is here. So the light's definitely up high and to the right, I would say. So we would most likely want our shadow pointing downwards like that, I would say, roughly there. And let's just soften that to 50. The harsher the shadow, the closer he looks to the text. So we want this to be quite soft, and the opacity brought quite far down to say 15, just to be a sort of a subtle shadow rather than an obvious one. So I'm just going to play it through and then adjust as I see fit. So that's not too bad, but I would say it's probably a bit too harsh. It feels a bit too. If you stop it there, for example, he looks a bit too close to it. So I'm just going to extend the distance and extend the softness. Okay, that's not too bad. It's not perfect, but I think that is okay. See, what you would do is you would embed the text in a bit more, give it a grade, a bit of dirt texture, possibly similar to this wall. You might even color it similar to this wall, or a contrasting color so it stands out, just to embed that in the scene. But we're just talking about the Roto for now, so ignore the fact that this text stands out quite a bit. So there we go, that is the basics of Roto, and hopefully I showed you in a way where you understand how once you have this one layer with all your masks, you can duplicate that, you can use it in different ways, where we started off have the text on a inverted mat, so that if I just solo that again, our mask is cut out, for example, so you will see the footage behind, and then we use that same mat but with our footage as a straight alpha mat, not an inverted mat, which is most likely the one you would want to go for. But there's so many different ways you can do it. This is why I don't tend to do the masks on our footage layer. I do it on a separate adjustment layer. So it's just a nice handy way of doing it, in my opinion. You might have your own ways, but that is how I like to do it. So I thought I would show you it that way. And yeah, you can choose any way you'd like to do it yourself. So I hope this introduction to rotoscoping was useful. I know it's quite a long one. Thank you for sticking with it, and I will see you soon.